Hello, in this video I'm going to go over the scribing altar for healers. I did a previous video for DPS if you're interested in that topic. It's kind of a lengthy video, but I tried to get as much information into one video that I can so that I can cover all the bases in case uh, there's a newer person to the game or a more experienced person to the game. I might cover something for everybody on that. So if this is not your cup of tea, then check out my channel. Maybe there's something else for you there. But I'm going to go into the scribing for healers. I'm going to start with I would recommend not using this on a healer. The reason why is because this has a 2-second channel. This is going to tie you up. About the only time you're going to be able to use this is at the beginning of an ad pull or something like that, where you are more free to cast something. In the fight, you're going to need to be popping spells fairly quickly and react to mechanics and all that. And this is just going to tie your character up too long to use in content, in my opinion, on a healer. So I would recommend not using this. If you are going to use it, then I would recommend looking at like a status effect implication like this with an off balance element to it. For this, really kind of hard to say what to put on. Maybe physical damage, but that's going to make it cost stamina. You don't want to stun or knock down or knock back enemies because that's going to irritate your tanks. You don't want to put them on cooldown. Trauma does not do anything in PvE content, so I would steer away from that. This is a PvP script. So probably frost damage. I have not tried this too much to figure out if this really works that well in PvE. You could try this to see how well it works for you, but I would definitely say that this is important to put on all of the enemies, and then off balance is probably number one. If you can really help your entire group of DPS burn ads down, if everybody in the ad group is off balance, that's going to increase their damage taken by 10%. So that would be what my recommended setup is for ad pulls. However, I would really caution on using it in the middle of the fight. I would use this as a, once the tanks have everything stacked up, start off with this, and then I wouldn't touch it during your rotations. But let's go into Mender's Bond. This has to be slotted on your restoration staff line, or bar, I should say, because it is a restoration staff skill. So I've gone over a couple of different things for this top script here. Damage shield is pretty good because this reapplies every second. Excuse me, every second. Restore resources is another really good one, again, because it's every second. This is going to pump 225 magicka, more importantly, stamina, to whichever ally you target. So if you, for example, I'll just slot this on my bar real quick. If you were to target your tank, I'll just go down here and kind of set up a scenario with my combat dummies. So let's say this is your tank, and this is your, oh, we'll put them here like this. And we'll put your tank here. Now you could cast your Mender's Bond from here, and it's going to put a tether, and then you can stand here behind everybody and have it hit your group as well as your tank. Now you're going to have to reapply that once every 10 seconds, so it is kind of a, or excuse me, 12 seconds. My memory's failing me. It is a very difficult skill to get to use in content, so I will say that that spell is probably going to be pretty niche in terms of getting it to work in some fights, because you're working with a tether. So I would say if you're going to use this, try and focus on benefiting your tank first and foremost, and then if you happen to tether your DPS, then just consider that icing on the cake and not necessarily something that you try to force, because it's going to make it really difficult to try and manage. You do have to stay within 20 meters of your tank, which it's a pretty decent distance, but if you are running around away from mechanics and stuff, then you could possibly snap the tether if you get away too far. So I would recommend either the damage shield or the resource regeneration. This right here, your tank should already have a pretty decent amount of ultimate regen, and I would not sacrifice your own to give to them, because their ultimates are not going to be as good in the subclassing world for the group. Healers should be trying to get their ultimates off, because one of their common ultimates is the Glyphic of the Tides, or should be. This is a very strong ultimate. Tanks are probably going to be set up rather selfish in the ultimate department, because they don't really run skill lines traditionally that are going to have a group benefit to them. The Winter's Embrace skill line is terrible for ultimate category, as I've covered in a previous video. Check out my channel if you haven't seen that. Also, the Magma Shell, it does give a shield to the group, but it doesn't buff damage like the Glyphic does. So I would recommend trying to keep your ultimate for yourself so that you can cast your Glyphic of the Tides. So I would not recommend using this generate ultimate. This script here does do some healing per second. However, you've got a ton of other spells on your bar that already do this. So the way I'm trying to attack this is to put something in your kit that is missing. That's the way I try to use the scribing system. And because of that, I would skip using this. This is an immobilization for enemies. Elite ads and bosses are immune to immobilizations, so again, I would not use this. Magic damage, this is not a real great script in my opinion. Mitigation, this is going to transfer 10% damage from whoever you have tethered to you. So be careful if you're going to use this. If you tether a bunch of people in your trial and they all take a bunch of damage, you might just end up wiping yourself out with this one, because you might get an influx of a shit ton of damage that hits you just in a wave really hard and fast. So be careful with this one. I would stay away from it. I would recommend giving the resources and the damage shield. I think those are probably going to be the most beneficial in the focus script department. Try the others if you want to, but it is going to cost you some ink if you have to rebuild the spell, so keep that in mind. Class Mastery, these are kind of terrible in my opinion for healing. This is really about snaring enemies, and if nobody gets snared, then you get resources back. I don't really need resources on my healer build. I really do just fine with resources. Again, if you're having trouble with resource sustain on your healer, please check out my video. I know I keep saying that, but I've done a lot of, I'm up in over 125 videos for this game now, so I'm trying to cover a lot of different things on here. This right here is really, and I should say I'm on a warden, so this is going to be different depending on your base class. But this is the warden version. Maybe I'll jump on some other ones real quick during this video, just look at the class mastery does, or perhaps I'll do that on a different video. That might be better to just cover the class mastery in all roles. Again, this grants immunity for disabling effects for 3 seconds to the ally. This could be useful, but I mean, it's, again, this is going to probably be the powerful part about this is the tether part. So, like I said, try to focus on how you can help your tank. And for me, the number one here is Knight's Valor. This is completely unique to the Mender's Bond spell. This increases the amount of damage that your tanks can block by 8%. Now, this is going to be additive, and this is going to probably not be 8% when it comes down to the actual damage that it blocks, but it's going to help, and it's something that they don't have on their build. It's a unique, I should say, block mitigation. It also reduces their block cost, which is another good thing. If their block cost is 1,000, for example, then it's going to be in the vicinity of 920 instead. So this right here, I would pick this over absolutely everything else. I'm not going to even talk about the other ones. This one should be the one you use. This Knight's Valor is absolutely amazing. This is unique to the Mender's Bond spell. You cannot get this on any other scribing spells. I know there is the Mages Guild has Gladiator's Tenacity that reduces your damage taken. This is different. This is block mitigation and reduction in block cost. This is absolutely great. So what you want to do is you want to hit your spell on your tank, and then try, if you can, tether your allies. If you can't, then don't worry about that. But this is right here what you want to keep on your tank at all times. For the bottom one, I would definitely go with Vitality. I know that Ozazon the Inferno will give you minor Vitality if they are at I should say under full health, but it only lasts for like 1 second, and so this is going to help kind of keep that buff up the entire time. It's a 10-second duration, so even if people walk into the tether, they're going to get the vitality for 10 seconds. So keep that in mind. It's not just a 10-second, while they're standing in the tether, they can walk out of it and keep it for 10 seconds. Protection is a good one, but I would really try and keep this vitality buff up. This is going to increase everybody's healing taken as well as their shield size, which will ironically buff the shield here that we have. So that's Mender's Bond. Shield throw is obviously a tank skill. We're going to skip that in this video. The same with these bottom three here. These are DPS ones. Okay, Soul Burst. This is a very important skill for healers, because this right here can be your fill-in skill for something that might be missing on your build. And I'm going to start with the number one most important thing that you should implement if you are not using the Curative Rune Farms skill line on your healer, and also, and more importantly, if you're not using Xena's Empowering Discs to give your group the Minor Courage buff. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Yolnahkrin is dead. Claws of Yolnahkrin from Sunspire was a tank set that provided your group Minor Courage. and I have dogged that set into the ground because this is such an easy buff to get via this skill or scribing. So the important thing is, if we're going to have that disposition and we're going to talk that way, then we need to finish the argument by actually putting it into practice. And so what I'm going to recommend is you go healing, Sage's Remedy, and courage for yours. Now I have mine on as resolve because I use the Xena's empowering disc, so I don't want to double up the courage on my builds. So I actually use Xena's because I believe it's better than this. And the reason I say that is because Xena's also gives minor recoveries. And I know that this only affects 6 people. They changed this so that it will only affect 6 allies. So that's why I recommend both healers running this. It's extremely powerful to give your group minor recoveries and minor courage for 30 seconds. And you're going to might be able to tell me, okay, that says 20 seconds there. The buff lasts for 10 seconds after they leave the vortex. So if they're standing in it and it disappears, it will last another 10. That means you have 10 seconds to reapply it without having the buffs drop off. That's why this is absolutely powerful. If you're in a mobile fight that you cannot have people stand in the ring, then absolutely I would recommend using Soul Burst for this. And that's where Soul Burst comes in, because rather than having it sit on the ground, this is a sticky buff where you heal them and you apply the minor courage for 20 seconds. So now the heal from this is not great, I will say that, but the purpose of this is mainly to provide minor courage to your group. These spells here, or scripts I should say, again, are not real great. You could remove a negative effect if you wanted to instead of having the heal over time, but I like to get as many hots in my build as I can. This right here, there's better ways to remove negative effects in my opinion. This one is you're gonna consume a soul gem to generate 3 ultimate. This generates 3 ultimate for you, so just be careful that you have enough soul gems for this to actually work. If you don't have soul gems, this will basically be a dead slotted script. And this is something I tried to show in the previous video with the DPS stuff, but basically this option here, when you filter and you uncheck this, you can now see, because I've selected healing, some of this stuff doesn't work. And it's because it's based on the first thing that you pick. You could do damage shield if you wanted to, and then the healing remedy, and then the courage. That would be kind of an okay setup. But again, I have other things that I can do damage shields with. Excuse me, I have the hiccups. And I would just recommend sticking with a heal skill, in my opinion. The damaging stuff, I really honestly would leave that to DPS. Your job as a healer is to heal and buff the group and keep them alive. I would not get into trying to do damage. If you're looking at applying a status effect of some kind, there's different spells that are better at that. So I would, if you're going to use Soul Burst, I would recommend healing with Sage's Remedy and Courage if you're not using Xena's. If you're using Xena's, then this is a good one right here. And the reason why, this setup here can replace your combat prayer in a way, while giving your combat prayer slot, per se, a heal over time ability as well. It doesn't heal quite as much as combat prayer does. However, instead of being in a cone in front of you, it's in a ring around you, basically. So It's a 8 meter radius around you. So it is. I'll just put it on my build real quick so you can see. Healing burst. I'll put it right over the top of combat prayer. Costs 31.85. So this is a little bit more expensive. However, it has a heal over time. It still gives your group minor resolve, but it's in a ring around you rather than just in front of you. And so this is a little bit easier to apply rather than running around and trying to smack a cone on your group. Um, the downside of using that instead of combat prayer gives minor berserk as well. I will say that's probably already going to be on your DPS builds, so keep that in mind. This does 10,499 in a burst heal, and this does just a little bit more in a burst heal. So keep that in mind. If you are running an arena staff from, I believe it's from Asylum Sanctorium, the Timeless Blessing, then you're going to want to keep this spell on your bar because that's what procs that setup. If you're not running an arena weapon that's based on a healing staff, then you can run whatever you want on your front bar. But let's just continue with the scribing skills. Wield Soul. Damage shield is what I recommend. And then I run a Sage's Remedy, and this right here is a sneaky way that you can apply major vitality. I will say this setup is a little bit buggy because it doesn't always hit who you want to, but you can hit somebody with this and give them major vitality for 10 seconds. I've practiced this in content with other group members, and it does happen. It's a little unreliable as to who it hits. So keep that in mind if you're going to try that. It is you might have to cast it a couple of times before it actually hits. Again, if you want to try to use the vitality part of it, you're going to have to make sure you pick the correct thing up here. So I would either go with damage shield or healing. I would ignore absolutely every one of these up here because they're damage or tank oriented. And then, again, this consumes soul gems to generate ultimate. If you have the soul gems, then by all means, you can use this. However, again, if you run out, you're not going to be able to res somebody. You're not going to be able to get the benefit of this in the middle of the fight if you run out of soul gems. So I would make sure you pack plenty into whatever you're going to do. Dungeon, trial, PvP, whatever you're talking about. This is another soul gem consumer. I would honestly try and stay away from those. They're just not a good thing to deal with, in my opinion. This restores resources. Again, I don't have trouble with sustain on my healer builds at all. Check out my channel for that. I have a great system for getting your healers to just never run out of resources. If you run out of resources on my healer build, then you're really pressing a lot of buttons that are high skills. I should say high costing skills. So the bottom one here, major brutality is pretty common. Major breach is already present. Cowardice, defile does not work in PvE. That's what I am talking about in this video for the most part. I suppose you could use this information for PvP healing, but this is more of a PvE focused healing video. Empower, I pretty much am going to call this a dead buff these days. Heavy attack builds have kind of fallen off a cliff. They just are not that common anymore because they cannot compete with subclassed Velothi builds are just so much more powerful, and they don't use heavy attacks because the Velothi mythic nukes their damage of those. So this is a dead script. I would not use this. Major intellect, this comes from potions. I would not even consider using this as a script. Regardless of what role you're in, if you're a DPS, you're probably using either weapon power or spell power pots. If you're a tank, you're probably using tripots. In either of those instances, major intellect and major endurance are both covered on those. So you don't need that on this. Major maim, this is applied by tanks. I would not use this. Major resolve, there's a much easier way to obtain this in group, handled by your tank. I would not handle this at all. Major savagery, this is already present on your group as well. And I don't think this one actually transfers to your group member. But this one I have done, and it does. I don't know if it's bugged. I have not actually checked it since update 47 to see if it still does, but I can tell you from first-hand experience that I have been able to give a single person the major vitality buff for 10 seconds using this spell. So I may do an isolated video on this just to test it out and to prove it, but I have done it myself. I can tell you that it does work. I don't know if they're in the process of taking that ability away, but I can tell you I have used it. Torchbearer, this in the past was a method of giving your entire group minor heroism. And since they started the banner, this skill basically for healers, in my opinion, should be put in the garbage can. This has a 2-second channel on it. It does not need to be used for minor heroism anymore because people running banner will provide minor heroism with 100% uptime for the entire group. So I would recommend not doing the heroism on this. Again, this is kind of it's a 2-second channel and it costs stamina, so I will just show you how I had mine previously set up with Warrior's Opportunity in the middle. So this would generate an ultimate to you and your allies with each swipe. Now this swipes 3 times, so you would generate 3 ultimate when we cast the spell, and then it increases your damage done to enemies inflicted with disabling effects by 10% for 6 seconds. So, excuse me. That's a strong buff there, but it's a difficult spell to run in content because it costs a lot of stamina and it has a cast time on it. So I would stay away from running this spell on a healer. I'm going to say the banner bearer should be skipped as well. So I'm going to finish the video talking about the Ulfsild's contingency and the trample spell. I'm going to cover trample first because, in my opinion, this one is another one that's kind of, you want to be careful about what you when you use this, because there is a channel on this. But this right here should be your source of major heroism in your build. If you need or want major heroism, this is how you should get it. Now, you can also use this spell to proc the powerful assault set, if that's what you want to use this, or if you're using the powerful assault set on your build. I would recommend using a magicka damage type here, because if you pick disease, it's going to switch to stamina. Same with physical damage also, and stun. I would not use trauma in PvE. This does not do anything for PvE monsters. Do not use stun either, because this is going to piss off your tanks. This is going to put them on cooldown for chaining in. Same with knockback. So I would recommend either frost damage. However, the reason why I picked magic damage is because I have Assassin's Misery here. So I'm already putting 3 status effects on here. You could use frost damage if you want to. And maybe you'll proc chilled as well. But the concussion, sundered, and hemorrhage is going to proc minor vulnerability, minor breach, and it will give you 100 weapon and spell damage. And then the hemorrhage status effect is basically a bleed that's going to tick really hard. So this right here is fairly cheap to use, but the problem with this skill is it has the 1.5 second cast time. So you want to be really, really careful on when you use this skill, because again, you could get caught with something really hard when you're in the middle of the cast there. So be really careful about when you use this. Ulfsild contingency. I recommend on this one using this for your group damage shield, and also a means to provide minor protection to your group. Now this is how I set this skill up on my tanks as well as my healers, and the reason why is because the damage shield is fairly large, it reduces group damage taken, and it gives minor protection for 22 seconds. It's not super expensive to cast, but it's a nice benefit to the group. Again, thinking about what you're missing in your build, okay? There's not a lot of damage shield spells for healing that cost magicka. Some of them, for example, if you go into the Undaunted, Bone Shield costs stamina. There's not a lot of shields available for healers to cast. There's the Healing Ward, which is nice, but this is doesn't do anything else other than the shield, and then it has a heal also, but this is a single target heal, so or I should say skill. So yes, I do like this chakram, but again, this only does a shield. So it's, if you do need a shield and you're looking for something to plug into your build, then I would recommend doing a damage shield for this with the Gladiator's Tenacity and minor protection. Those are going to be some really nice buffs that you can add to your group. The damage shield is fairly large, and you can reduce your group's damage taken by 8 seconds. It's not a huge amount, but it helps. But the other benefits here, major brutality, that does not transfer to your group. Minor force is already there on Velothi. Minor intellect, Xena's empowering discs provides this. Now I will say, if you're using the Soul Burst skill instead of Xena's, then you might need to put this in here. But then you're kind of almost using 2 spells to do the power of 1. So I would really recommend using Xena's empowering discs. Magicka Steel is a good buff. However, in order to use this, you need to have an offensive, like frost damage, for example, here, in order to apply Magicka Steel. But there is a much, much better way to apply Magicka Steel than this. So I would recommend not using this. Minor Resolve, is a much better way of getting Minor Resolve in your group than this. Savagery and Prophecy, I believe, is a solo, does not transfer to your group. See, it says grants you major savagery. Minor vulnerability, again, you have to have the damage element there in order for that to hit. So that's kind of how you need to focus on building these spells. Is if you pick, for example, a damage shield here, it's going to turn off a lot of what you can do for the rest of the way. So just be mindful of that. But I would stick with the damage shield, the protection, and the gladiator's tenacity. This is probably your best setup for Ulfsild's contingency, in my opinion. Your tanks probably run this as well, but shields stack. The only thing that's not going to stack on here is going to be the damage reduction taken. I'm sure that's probably got a named picture buff or whatnot, and the minor protection also, but the shields should stack because shields do stack. So keep that in mind. But I'm going to end the video here. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please check out my YouTube channel. Go down to my created playlists for all of my Elder Scrolls Online content. Thanks again, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.